Hello friends, it's Katie, and today I have a bit of an unboxing and I thought we would also, while we're at it, do a bit of a comparison because basically I love the Flowers of the Night Oracle by Cheralyn Darcey so much that I ordered the new Rockpool mass published edition from Cheralyn, which will be signed, and also came with a zine that she's created. So this is kind of a double whammy, unboxing and a comparison video. So let's of course start with the unboxing, which I am super excited about. Ooh, ooh, how fun. They're like black flowers. Okay, so we have here what I'm assuming is the little zine. These are kind of a fun little touch. Very appropriate given that it's the Flowers of the Night and everything is wrapped in black tissue paper, which is lovely. And we have a little diamante here. Ooh. Oh, this is very cute. How pretty. So this is handmade by Cheralyn and was kind of like a special offer if you pre-ordered the new edition of the deck from her. So we'll just have a little bit of a look. I have number 77 of 100. This looks like a lot of fun. Cool. Alright, well I'll have a bit of a read of that later. It's very cute. And this, of course, is the new deck by Rockpool. Now, I don't tend to be someone who gets backup decks, but I decided in this case that I was curious about, apparently the guidebook has been kind of updated and improved. And if I had one criticism of the self-published edition, it would be that the guidebook, I felt, could have used some more editing, could have used some more information. Here's Cheralyn's little, this is cute. And there's the lovely Cheralyn. And this is the box, which is a little bit different to all the other Rockpool boxes that I have seen, which tend to be like the larger boxes, and then come with, you know, kind of like the full-size guidebook. This is more like a Hay House sort of box size, which I actually quite like. I really like the regular boxes because they're quite thin, but I do prefer smaller boxes over those larger ones just because they take up less space. That's a pretty green on the inside there. Now, obviously, the first difference is the box. This is the self-published edition. The box is quite a bit bigger in the self-published, not massively, but it is a bit thicker as well. And obviously, the finish is very different. This is much more of like a smooth sort of finish, and it does open up like a clam sort of opening, which is really nice. Whereas the Rockpool is a bit glossier, obviously has a different image on the front as well, and the Flowers of the Night is a bit shiny. And then it opens up like this. Now we have the little guidebook, which is very cute. And already I can see that there's a bit more information, I think, about the flowers. Haven't looked at the guidebook in a little while though, so let's pull that out and have a bit of a look. Okay, so this is what we get in the self-published for Blazing Star. I'm not sure if she's changed any of the cards. I can't remember. I know that she said one way or the other, I just can't remember. But this is kind of the information we get for one of the cards. We get some information about the message of the card, the affirmation, and the keyword. But one thing that I did feel like was missing was the connection, an explanation of the connection between the flower, the image, and the message, which I'm kind of hoping will have been included in the new one. Okay, so this time they're alphabetized using the keywords rather than the flowers. But this is the Blazing Star Awakening. Okay, yep, so basically this information on this page here isn't in the original guidebook, but this looks to be very similar to the second page of the information. So the information we are given is more specifically about the flower. This was lacking in the original self-published, which I am really glad to see. That is something that I felt was lacking. Let's have a bit of a look what else is in here. Ooh, I got mine signed. How fun. This is a really well constructed little book. I really like the paper and everything. It's quite different from other Rockpool decks, which are more like larger and glossier and more colourful. Have a couple of spreads, and then we just get into the messages of the cards. So you get plenty of info here, and it's over 100 pages. Oh, and that's cool, she offers you a bibliography in here as well. I can't remember if that was in here too. I think it was. No, it wasn't. Okay, well that's a nice little addition to the new one. And did she have spreads? Yeah, she did have a couple of spreads. Yeah, so I mean they're similar, but it looks like you get quite a bit more content, especially about the actual flowers, as well as that bibliography, and just the sizes are a bit different. And obviously, as with the boxes, this is glossy and this is very matte, and the blacks are quite different too. This is a much more rich, vibrant sort of color. So one thing I was really happy about was that the backs remained the same. This was one of the most beautiful backings I've ever seen on an Oracle deck. So I was really happy to hear that that would be staying the same with the new edition. Now these are alphabetized by the keyword rather than the flower, which this one was. So I'm going to put this one back in order, in the same order as this one, so that we can kind of go through and have a bit of a look. Okay, I have rearranged the self-published edition in alphabetical order according to the keyword as opposed to the flower. So let's see if any of the cards are changed and how they're different. Obviously at first glance there are a couple of differences. The first being that the cards are, the new cards, the mass published deck by Rockpool is quite a bit smaller. I do like that they've maintained them being borderless. A lot of the Rockpool decks have quite big borders, which don't tend to bother me, but I think with this one, you know, the knight being so expansive, I like that they're just black, Then obviously, this is a lot shinier, glossier. This is kind of like, it's a bit of a gloss, but not much. This is a lot more glossy. And the kind of contrast and saturation seems to be a little bit different too. The blacks in this Rockpool deck are a lot more black, but then the colors are also a little bit more vibrant. Also, the way that the cards are labeled is a little bit different. The keyword comes first with the name of the flower underneath in a different color. It's a little bit more simple. Whereas in Cheralyn's self-published, they're arranged slightly differently. But yeah, it looks like Rockpool's done a pretty good job. Like I think sometimes it can be a bit scary when a deck you really love gets picked up for mass publishing, because you know it's really kind of the whims of the the publisher that kind of determines the quality of the cards and everything. In the light that I'm seeing these cards in, the black looks a bit different in the Rockpool. It almost looks like a warmer black, if that makes sense. There seems to be like a warmer, almost greeny yellow undertone, as opposed to these being a bit cooler. I don't know if that's coming up so much in the camera, but that's just a small observation that I'm noticing. Although the only reason you notice these sort of things is because you have the two next to each other. I don't think you would notice it so much if they were just on their own. But that is something that I'm noticing, and we are doing a comparison. Okay, so I have done a review on this deck, and I don't think I'll be updating that review. I don't think there'll be so many changes that I need a new review, but this is just to kind of give you an idea of the differences. So if you have this one and you're thinking about, you know, is it worth you getting the new one, hopefully this video will help you. Or if you ever have the opportunity to choose between the two, hopefully this video will also help you. So I think I'll just be showing you this deck mostly, and we'll just kind of go through and see if there have been changes in terms of the artwork or the titles or anything like that. But our first card is of course the acceptance card, Evening Primrose, which is very pretty. This deck is beautiful. Cheralyn does this kind of lino looking artwork, and I think she does such a brilliant job of depicting a certain aspect of the flowers, a certain face of the flowers that's really interesting. And I like the bee here too. So these cards remain the same. We have achievement. Isn't that awesome? For me, this is a deck that certainly invokes very particular emotions. I love how sometimes it can be, it really feels like you're out in a garden and the moon is illuminating the flowers, so that they're a little bit hard to make out sometimes. I think she's done a beautiful job of portraying that whole mood of being out at night. Isn't that beautiful? Colours are very rich in comparison to the original. But so far, doesn't seem to be a lot of changes in terms of the cards, which I think is a pretty good thing. Although, you know, I'm always open. We'll see if we get to any changes, how I feel about those. But so far, we're pretty well the same. Balance, chocolate flower. I love too how with Cheralyn's art, in all of her decks that I have, she includes other stuff in the background, which I find interesting. With the wildflowers, she includes like places around the world that the flower can be found, and that give a different layer of significance to the meaning. So I always like that there's something else going on in her cards, that it's not just a picture of a flower. It's also the backgrounds that can tell us a bit of a story too. Isn't that beautiful? And we have Challenge, Dragon Fruit. There seems to be a bit less texture in the backgrounds of the mass-produced cards as opposed to the self-published. Perhaps that's because the contrast and stuff has gone up. But I mean, if you can see, the background of this one has little kind of like white swatches, like it's a little bit textured, whereas that's kind of lost in this card. You can still see some of them, but not a lot. So that's something that I've noticed too. Ooh, have I put these in the wrong order, or do we have... Okay, so it doesn't look like we have a cleansing card in the new deck. So this Dutchman's Pipe Cactus isn't included in the new deck, so I'll leave this out so we can have a look at the end. But we go back to... You can see a lot more detail in the face of the wolf, for example, in the original, I think. Although this does kind of look a little bit more like you've just caught a glimpse of the face in the night. Yeah, you can kind of really tell the difference with the brightness, the contrast, the saturation, especially with the owl in this one. But I guess that's just like a personal preference as to which one you prefer, really. Compassion. The yellow is a lot brighter in this one than in the original. Depth. I love this card. All those big eyes that you can hardly see. Okay, here we have another. Okay, so this is an extra card in the Rockpool deck. So where we didn't have the cleansing card in the Rockpool deck, we have this one, the Death card, which is very interesting. I really like that. The colors are beautiful. And this looks like a fruit bat or something. Let me have a look. Okay, so it's the Indian flying fox, which is apparently also known as the Indian fruit bat. So I wasn't too far off, but it's a very cute card. I like it a lot. Okay, now we go back to having the same cards again. Which again, I think the animals in the Rockpool deck are a little bit harder to make out. And normally that would be something that I don't like. But I think with this deck it can kind of work, given that the whole point is that you're kind of out in the wild at night and not everything is super clear, is it? Isn't that pretty? Focus. This was the box cover of the original, which is super beautiful, and just for comparison, they're both lovely. Freedom. Isn't that cute? I love that so many animals are included. So it's not just a flower deck. Not that there's anything wrong with just flowers, but there's a lot more going on. You know, there's a lot more to work with if you want to work with these cards intuitively. You don't just have to know, you know, the language of the flowers. I mean, I'm sure that certainly helps, and I do find the guidebook helpful. But there's a lot more to work with than just a picture of a pretty flower. There's kind of a whole scene going on in these cards, which is awesome. I mean, certainly the flowers are at the center of that scene, but there's more here than just the flowers. Isn't that beautiful? I love this kind of burning moon. This is cute. It was one of my favorite cards in the original deck. This is another one that's so pretty. I just love the bursts of color. I think they're really effective. And I love that we have a mix of, you know, marsupials and mammals and insects. Isn't that cute? Oh, and reptiles. Can't forget the reptiles. Power, Queen of the Night. Oh, I love that a snake is for this card. When I first saw this, I actually thought it was a different card. I guess because the angle I'm at, and also just the color is quite different. Just like at a glance, I thought it was a different card for half a second. But it remains the same. But I think this pretty much typifies the difference between these cards. The original self-published is a lot brighter. There's a lot more texture in the background of the card. Whereas the new one, the saturation, the contrast, it's all a bit darker. The colors are a bit brighter, more intense. So it does kind of produce a little bit of a different feel. Readiness. Release. I've had a lot of really great experiences with my self-published deck, pardon me. I've had it for a few months now, and Cheralyn did send it to me originally to review, which I made pretty clear in my review. And I had just some really powerful experiences with it. It was really moving. It was kind of a bit of tough love. It wasn't easy and sweet and kind and nurturing. It was nurturing just in a more powerful way. It wasn't going to baby you, you know, but I did have some really wonderful experiences with it, very emotional experiences. So it is a deck that found its way into my heart very quickly. This is the moon that we see on the back, but obviously it's not just, I don't like it when, you know, like the whole image of one of the cards is just the backing, but I don't mind this at all, where we have a small element of the backing or of the card is made into an element of the backing. And I do think it kind of ties into the whole deck really well. It really fits. Sometimes backing's just, you're kind of like, where does that come from? It doesn't seem like it suits the deck at all. In this case, I think it's absolutely perfect. Okay, so although there have been some changes made to the production in terms of cardstock, box, all of that, printing, I don't want to say quality, but printing colors, saturation, there hasn't been many changes, except that instead of the cleansing card in the original deck, we now have the death card in the Rockpool deck. So that's pretty much the only big change. I really like both of these cards. There's something quite striking about this one, but I mean, cleansing, death, they're not too far apart, you know what I mean? They're both about releasing and cycles in one way or another. Death obviously feels a lot more final, a lot stronger, but ultimately they kind of are rather similar. The Rockpool deck feels more flexible perhaps. This feels more like cardboard in some ways. This feels a bit more bendy, a bit more plasticky. But they don't feel super different in terms of thickness. They're about the same height as far as the piled cards is concerned. I prefer the feel of the original, the self-published. I just feel like I don't love super glossy cards, although if I'm going to have glossy cards, I prefer it on Oracle decks. It bothers me less on Oracle decks. So let's have a bit of a shuffle and see what information is provided in the new guidebook. They're pretty easy to shuffle. They're not too sticky. They are a tiny bit in comparison to perhaps the self-published, but I know with Rockpool decks that kind of that stickiness wears off a little bit as you use them, but it's definitely more prevalent, but not to the point where it's like a shiffer deck or something. They're a nice size to handle too, because they're not too big. Oh, and we get the death card, the new card in the deck. That's kind of appropriate, isn't it? All right, let's have a bit of a read. Okay, so this is the information that we get. As I said, I know this card isn't in the old deck, but this page of information was kind of what we would get in the old book. This is the extra information that has been added for the new book. An annual herb growing just under a metre, devil's trumpet is found throughout the world in warmer climates, but its origins are unknown. Although it has been used in Indian Ayurveda medicine, all parts of the plant are highly toxic. Flowers are white, cream, red, yellow, or even violet, and 15 to 20 centimetres, or 6 to 8 inches long. The flowers also have a beautiful fragrance. The Indian flying fox lives in Sri Lanka, India, Bangladesh, Tibet, Maldives, Pakistan, and Nepal. They are nocturnal and feed on ripe fruits and nectars, and are the largest bats in the world, weighing up to 1.6 kilograms or 3.5 pounds. And then we move into the message of the card. An ending is indicated. You may be about to experience it, or you may need to invoke it yourself. Devil's trumpet can also be reminding you of something that has passed. Often it is impossible for the new to grow and take hold until the old has actually died in some way and ceased to be. A time of sleep, long-earned rest, and withdrawal may be forthcoming and attained. Loss is a strong force associated with the devil's trumpet, so extra care should be taken at the moment, as well as consideration for things you may actually wish to let go of. Now would be a very good time to take action to release what you no longer require. A very positive aspect of Devil's Trumpet is that it can also signify the end of difficulties and challenges, which you may have had to face, as well as the completion of arduous tasks undertaken to attain goals. Challenges include feeling unable to walk away from a situation or to admit defeat. Our affirmation is, I accept that this is an ending, and keywords, death, defeat, loss, ending, completion, sleep, passing. So I definitely prefer the new guidebook. I like the fact that there's an explanation or a description of the flower and the animal that is included in the card, which was kind of lacking a little bit from the original guidebook. That is something that I certainly was looking for. As for the meaning itself, it seems to be better laid out in terms of the book kind of formatting. I find it easier to read, as well as in this example, there's no I didn't notice any errors in terms of grammar or spelling, which was something that I kind of did notice quite a bit in the original guidebook. For a more direct comparison as far as the guidebook is concerned, or the guidebooks are concerned, I've had a bit of a read quickly of the Night Blooming Daylily card, or the Creation card. And as I said, you certainly don't get that description here that is provided in the Rockpool deck. You don't get that in the original self-published. That's just not evident at all. There are, in this case, in this card, I haven't read through the whole entire books, both of them. There are some small changes in terms of the meaning. Largely it remains the same. There are a couple of changes though, like for example, I've been talking about how the editing isn't great in the self-published edition. In this one of the paragraphs reads, the birth of someone or the news of such a wonderful occasion could be near. That's just not well edited. It's a very difficult sentence to read. There's one too many or someone's. That has been removed from this deck, and in fact that sentence has been rewritten. Instead it reads, someone's birth or the news of such wonderful occasion could be near. So it's just a lot more clear, and also just how the paragraphs are laid out, I find that easier to read. This one seems to be a new line for each kind of new sentence almost. I don't know, it's just not very as well defined in terms of the paragraphs. The other thing is that for this example, there's actually a line missing in the Rockpool deck. So for the old book, there's a kind of sentence explaining the positive of this card. It reads, improvement in difficult situations and a change of luck, fortune, and the removal of negative energy should be much easier. That doesn't exist in the Rockpool deck. But, I mean, overall, it remains largely the same. There's not a lot added or a lot removed. I mean, apart from that one sentence and then, kind of an improvement in terms of the editing. But the affirmation, the keywords, they stay all the same. And the overall meaning does maintain, its essence. And then we just get the extra information about the flower. So, I mean, I think basically I prefer the Rockpool book quite a bit because, as I said, that information about what the flower was, some information about, its characteristics, as well as the animal or whatever else is in the card, that I really did feel like was lacking. So I'm glad that Rockpool has included that. But in terms of the cards themselves, I think I prefer the original self-published. I mean, I do like the addition of the death card, although I quite like the cleansing card too, and I don't feel like I'm missing that kind of overall energy of something ending, something being removed, and that kind of closing of the door of a past cycle or whatever. I think you get the overall general idea still in both of these cards. I do prefer the colouring of the original, the fact that they're not as dark. I can kind of see the animals a lot more easily. As I said, I just prefer this colouring, but I mean, that's absolutely personal preference, personal taste. Ultimately though, I think Rockpool's done a great job. There's not a huge amount of difference between the two. I don't think, although I prefer my self-published cards, I wouldn't be super upset if I hadn't bought the self-published. now that this one's available. You know what I mean? I don't think that you're really missing out on a huge amount by purchasing this one at all. Indeed, the book is better, in my opinion. So I think Rockpool's done a really, really great job, and I'm so glad that this deck is available, more accessible and available again for anyone who is interested in it, because it's just a really beautiful, wonderful deck, and I really enjoy Cheralyn's work, and this would be my favorite of her decks, and I've played around with 3 of them. Her Australian Wildflowers and the Wildflowers are both really great decks, and they're decks that I give as gifts a lot because people just love them, and I certainly enjoy them too. But this one just has something a little bit more special about it, something deeper and more interesting, perhaps. It's a very interesting take on the language of flowers. I think perhaps because in some ways decks that are all about flowers, and even books and things, they can tend to be a bit flowery, a little bit light. I mean, not all the time, but that's kind of, you know, when we think of flowers, we think of pretty and lovely, and whereas I think that's a really interesting contrast in this deck in particular, that they're in the night, they're a little bit creepy, a bit spooky, you know, they're kind of just illuminated by the moonlight, you're not quite sure what you're seeing. I don't know, there's a very interesting juxtaposition there that I think works really well, and Cheralyn's done a great job of kind of really taking advantage of that juxtapositioning and really kind of exploiting it to the best end, I think. But I just wanted to share this to give you a bit of an idea of, you know, the differences, and to kind of, I don't know, kind of allay your fears if you were worried that it was super terrible, that you missed out on the original one. Fear not. The Rockpool one is a great new addition, and of course it will be a lot more affordable and a lot more accessible all around the world, which is very exciting. But that is all from me for today. I do hope you've enjoyed our little unboxing and comparison video, and as always, if you have any questions, feel free to leave those below. I'll do my best to get back to you. If you have either of these decks, I would love to hear which you prefer, or even just from watching this video. Is there something that kind of stands out to you that perhaps I missed, or do you prefer the colouring in the Rockpool? Let me know, and I will talk to you guys very soon. So much love. Bye.